Hello YouTube, my name is Paul, hope you're all keeping well. Welcome back to another video. I'm going to talk about my experiences at Play Blackpool 2019. An event that I thoroughly enjoyed going to last year. Now Play Blackpool has got a lot to offer if you are a collector or if you enjoy sort of making content and meeting people that actually watch your content, which is awesome. Just going in for the sheer fun of it, playing arcade games or checking out some of the old computers and consoles from sort of like the late 70s right through to the modern day. If you go there and see some events, listen to old development houses talk about how they were established and what they used to get up to. Or if you're someone who follows YouTubers around, or bigger YouTubers, they do their panels there where they can ask some questions and all the rest of it. So there's plenty to do there, including buying and not necessarily selling, buying from the trade hall and that. But yeah, there's loads to do, and the best thing about Play Blackpool is the fact that it's all situated within a large hotel complex. It's the nicest hotel complex, but at least it's there. So it's a great focal point for those who want to meet up before the event. Whereas most other events, they're probably away from where you would sleep for the night, if that makes sense. So you've got to go back and forth all the bloody time. So yeah, so this was my second time to Play Blackpool. I wasn't going to go at one point, about 3 or 4 days before I actually decided to, or actually went, I decided to go. With thanks to a couple of people really, actually more than 2 people, but as we progress I will say thank you to those who are responsible for my going. So yeah, so I got a lift up with Chris, Novabug, like I did last year really, so thank you very much for taking me up to Blackpool, Chris. It's much appreciated. We set off about 6 AM, which was slightly later than we did last year, but last year it took about 10 hours to reach Blackpool, which is about nearly 400 miles from where we live. So we set off at 6. One thing I do like about my journeys is getting the old McDonald's breakfast. You can't beat them, can you? There's a double sausage and egg McMuffin. Wow. Not ideal for someone of my physique, but I tell you what, I don't care. It's flipping awesome. So we got to sort of Cheltenham, Gloucester area, picked up Steve, Addy Sneaker Freak. Again, I've met Steve before at events, but never really sat down and spoke to him for any period of time. So this time we had no excuses because we were stuck in the car for about 3 hours. But it's great to see Steve. I mean, he's a collector of Adidas merchandise, predominantly trainers. So it's interesting to listen to what he does, I suppose, in his own sort of, I don't know, for his own collection, I suppose. He recently visited an event up in Blackburn, just talking about that. So yeah, it's quite good to get an insight into each other's kind of collection, I suppose. Both obviously big games players, were sort of reminiscing about the games we played yesteryear. But yeah, it was great. So it was great talking to Chris and Steve, and it made the journey seem like literally a couple of hours, which is fantastic really. So yeah, we got to the event about 2, half 2. Now if you've ever been to Norbreck before, or in fact any place it seems to be in Blackpool, you need to have cash, which is quite weird. So I went to the bar to buy Chris and Steve a drink, and I didn't have any bloody money. I should have remembered from last year really. So Steve ended up getting around, which was quite hilarious. But I had to go to the cash point and get some money out for the rest of the weekend really, otherwise, yeah, what a pain in the arse that is. But yeah, so we sat down, and that's sort of the afternoon progressed. More and more people turned up, especially from the sort of YouTube community really. Big players and small players alike, all mingling together, which is fantastic. And I bumped into Retro Man Cave Neil. I mean, I saw him before at a previous event in Blackpool. And again, he's a very approachable guy. I'll sit there and I'll just entertain you and listen to what you got to say. But yeah, he's a nice bloke, and a very humble bloke. And it's great to see people that do really well still remain connected to what got them there in the first place, really, and it's fantastic. Another person like that is Kim Justice. I mean, Kim, again, no different. There's no airs and graces about either of these guys really. They'll talk about anything you want to talk to them about, because at the end of the day they're all passionate about retro systems and retro games. So it's great to speak to those two. But throughout the night, I've got a list of people. I try not to miss anybody out. I try not to miss Dylan Craven out this time, but I did write him down this time, so he'll be there. But yeah, so thanks to Chris for taking us up there. Obviously, Addy Sneaker Freak Steve as well. Steve, Retro and Lim, so he got us the tickets to get into the event, which was fantastic. Because Big Mike got me onto Tootie, then got me onto Steve, who emailed me the ticket. So it's fantastic for that, Steve. Anything I could do for you, mate, you just let us know. Laura? Where the hell's Laura come from? Lewis and Amanda. Lewis's channel's Wish Wash. Again, seen Lewis before, a couple of trade fairs and a couple of events. We're both quite quiet by nature, so unfortunately you get those kind of awkward moments, don't you? But after a couple of drinks and the fact that we've seen each other before, it just makes life a lot easier. We had a really nice conversation, just talking about basically the prices of games really, and where we saw them going. Because some games are, as you know, are very common, but command a high price. So it's great to see the pair of them. Cajones Doloro, it's really nice for Daz to come across and buy me a drink. Really appreciate that, Daz. It's a very nice gesture, mate. One of these guys I always used to go to watch on YouTube, one of the very first sort of people, and I used to watch, especially I work late on a Friday, so I get home and I obviously sell it to the missus and all, and then put on the old Waffleage or something like that and really enjoy watching Daz's content. So it's really nice of you to do that, mate. Really, really do appreciate it. To UK, I mean, stalwart of these events, really. I mean, he's one of the sort of earlier people that really did promote coming to Blackpool and meeting up on the Friday night and have a good chat and a good drink. And so yeah, it's great to always see Tootie. Again, a very down-to-earth bloke. He'll talk to anybody. And his good friend Rob. Rob I spoke to for quite a considerable amount of time. I can't remember if it was the Saturday. It might have been the Friday actually when we got there. It's one of the first people I actually spoke to. We're talking about his collection and my collection, and how sort of kids get involved. Get involved in retro games really, because obviously nowadays games are quite complex to get into them, but the old games are great pick up and play titles. You say it's quite nice to see like the younger generation picking up these games really. Talking about PVM monitors or MVP monitors or whatever the hell they're called. I'm interested in getting one, but I've got nowhere to put it unless I hang it from the bloody ceiling, which ain't gonna happen. But yeah, so really good to talk to Rob. Dana and Liam, they were there again. Again, always at these events, kind of setting the pace really when it comes to the old beer consumption. I forgot to mention all of Tootie's other buds that were there. There were lots of buds there actually. But yeah, so they kept hold of Robocop 3 for me last year, Liam and Dana. Like I said before, Liam found it in a clearance, and Dana got on to someone on a WhatsApp group about the game, and it was pointed in my direction, so that's fantastic. So it's always good to see the two lads. Again, went out of these guys on the Friday night. Silly Steve, or Steve, I mean, I've seen Steve before at an event, but we didn't really speak a lot, because by the time I got to Revival last, or earlier in the year, I didn't get there till really late. So it's great to spend a significant amount of time with Steve, because we both love the Amiga, we both love the Mega Drive. Just sharing stories really, it's fantastic. But yeah, nice chap Steve. Do enjoy your company, mate. Craig, Minx36, another fantastic chap. I met Craig last year. Again, we spoke briefly, spent a bit more time this time. It's very difficult when you're seeing so many different people and you want to talk to different people, but we did actually spend a bit more time. And he made sure I got in my cab safe and sound on Saturday morning, which was fantastic, so thank you for doing that, mate. Scott, Glory Hunter 82. Again, another chap I spoke to very briefly at Revival. We spent a bit more time talking this time. Played a bit of Bubble 2-player. Got to level 85, which is impressive for me. I've never got that far before. He only used a couple of continues. I used about 102, the bastards. But it's great spending a bit of time with you, Scott, talking about the collection and stuff like that. Because again, he collects more modern systems, so I was getting a bit of an education really from Scott about the Xbox. OG Xbox, as he calls it. Pete on a retro tip, always a pleasure to meet Pete. One of the most sort of down-to-earth people, most level people you'll ever meet. He's wearing a fine fragrance on Saturday night. Hilarious. But I do like seeing Pete. He does put a smile on my face even without even saying anything. Just makes me smile. Always a pleasure, mate. Bumped into Jimmy Retro and his missus. Again, they were sampling the delights of the Blackpool cuisine and the nightlife. I think they went into town quite a bit actually, so yeah, made a bit of a weekend of it. So it's always good to see Jimmy. Gav and Chris, the Retro Heads. It's always strange really, because they come from sort of Newcastle area. So to say they only took them 2.5 hours to reach Blackpool is a bit surprising really. Bearing in mind, Newcastle from where I live in Cornwall is flipping hundreds of miles away. So you just realise, it don't dawn on you really how north you are being in Blackpool. But it's always great to see Gav and Chris. So I think we was out together on the Friday night. But yeah, again, a couple of lads just really down to earth. Zypho. It's nice to meet Zypho. Never met Zypho before. Again, as one of these sort of Amstrad contingent. Does his live streams on a Friday night, I think he does. Really nice bloke. Again, I think he had the jitters like most people do in their panel earlier in the day. I think they were bloody relieved once it was out of the way. It's a really nervy thing to do, isn't it, really? Do a panel. So it's great to meet Zypho. Phil, Yellow Belly, was there like flipping, loving life, taking pictures and interviewing people and getting behind the scenes. Which is fantastic. And I sort of remember Phil briefly from last played Blackpool. Bumped into Top Hat Gaming Man, again someone who's completely different to his character, which is yeah really cool actually. He's very down to earth, very humble bloke. It's really nice to meet Richard and his missus. They were there with their little toddler, so brilliant. What else? Who else? James, Let's Talk Retro. He was there. Everywhere James is, he's got his camera. Yeah, it's really good to see James. Shane Colin couldn't make it, but I can completely understand why. But really nice to see James anyway. We sort of bumped into each other on and off throughout the entire weekend, to be honest. Then I cannot forget Dylan. I forgot Dylan last time. I felt bloody ashamed that I forgot Dylan. He was there with Eddie. Eddie with the limp. Limp Biscuit. I've got no idea what's going on with Eddie. I think he had a tattoo done on the back of his leg, but that was his excuse anyway. But yeah, it's great to see the guys. So yeah, they all kind of congregated, or most people congregated, within the sort of bar area of the Norbreck. There is 2 bars. Last year we went to a completely different bar, which is probably the better bar. This bar is bigger and much more inclusive. It was great really. So by the time everyone got talking to each other and started getting dark outside, we started heading off towards town. I went to an Irish bar, and the good thing about town, before I go into that, is it's all connected by the tram. So I think the tram goes on for quite a few miles. But the actual strip itself is a couple of miles in length. It's a very old place to go and have a walk. But yeah, we went into town. I think we went into a place called Shenanigans or something like that. It's an Irish bar. It's the first bar I've ever been into in my entire life with this sawdust on the floor. Which kind of makes sense in a little bit. So yeah, I was in there for a while actually, dancing away, listening to some great music. And then I had this urge to pop to the loo, so I went into the loo. There's some flipping geezer there with his fucking hands down his pants, like sort of sat there on the bloody sink. So I thought, what the hell is all that about? So that straight away kind of put me off my stride. I sort of went straight back out the flipping toilet. Mentioned it to a couple of lads and all. Even mentioned it to the bouncer, who didn't really seem to give a toss, to be honest. But yeah, I had to hold on for dear life. I was fucking busting. But I can now see why. There's sawdust on the floor. God knows what the hell is on that flipping floor, I tell you. But yeah, that was good fun in there. I remember that a bit more than I remember the nightclubs. Went to the nightclub after that. And yeah, it was seeing people dancing around. Toot was there giving it some welly with the old dancing. There's some dude there with a pink wig on. I want to say his name's Craig. I want to say he's Super Quintendo. He was loving it. I don't think this guy gets allowed out very often. He was all over the gaff. I tell you so. Man, he was enjoying himself. That's all I'm going to say, really. He was enjoying himself. I think Liam was talking to me about being chatted up by some bloke. So I think he was extremely uncomfortable by that. I do remember that. Bless him. But yeah, it was a good night. I've got to be honest. And like I said, it was lovely of Craig to kind of put me in a taxi with a couple of the other lads. He was there with a really tall friend of his. I don't know the guy's name. And Steve, Addy Sneaker Freak, going back to their hotel. I kind of got the cab the rest of the way up to the Norbreck. And that was that. But my hotel room's very similar to the one I had last year. It had a single bed though, which makes no fucking odds because you can't sleep no matter what anyway. so bloody uncomfortable. But the window was whistling. It was really strange. It was shut, but the air was coming through. If I had a harmonica up against it, I probably would have got a really good tune or something, but it was hilarious. I had to really pull the window really as tight as I could to stop the flucking, to stop the flipping noise. But yeah, the hotel room was no better than last year really. It's just as grim and probably not been updated since the 70s, I would say. But that's the Friday night, and the Saturday I spent a bit more time sort of in the actual exhibition itself. I felt a lot better than I did the year before. Met Lucas Rainford on the Saturday. Yeah, he came up, sort of made a beeline for me, which is really nice. It's a bit of an odd sensation having someone sort of find you to introduce themselves and say hello. I mean, it's not something that happens every single day. It might happen in work and all, but not sort of like in everyday events. But Lucas is always leaving comments on a lot of our videos, so it's really nice to meet him. He offered to buy me a pint. Couldn't face any beer, to be honest, so we had a rum and coke, so it was really nice to do that. But it would have been great to spend more time speaking to you, Lucas, to be honest. I mean, I know you're there with your little girl and all, and you looked like you was having fun, but it'd be great to have like I say, a couple of pints and sat down and a good old chat, which I'm sure we will at some point. I just got to try and work out how not to get so pissed on a Friday night, because again, I don't really drink like that, so once I do drink, a bit like Craig really, just go mad and then all of a sudden you're like paying for it, aren't you? So yeah, it's lovely to meet Lucas, so thank you very much for doing that for me, mate. Brilliant. But yeah, the day was spent really just going around a trade hall where I picked up a couple of Atari ST mice. That's the right way of saying it. I've been after a mouse for ages for the ST, but they're quite expensive nowadays on eBay. They're notoriously unreliable as well. A bit like the Amiga tank mice, I suppose, mouse. But yeah, so I got a couple of those for about £5, and that's all I got in terms of pickups. I know a lot of the other lads pick stuff up. I'm sure they'll show them off in their own pickup videos. Craig's here again, was there. He literally does have a banana box in the boot of his car. Guys weren't joking really, but that's quite hilarious. Box of Amiga titles, but nothing there sort of took my fancy really. I think Steve might have picked up one or two, or silly Steve. But it's great to see Craig again, someone I don't really know particularly well. Only through the comments really, and obviously at these events. But yeah, so that's pretty much how it went on really. Played a few arcade games. I remember playing Salamander, played a bit of Time Pilot's a bloody good game. I didn't realise how good and fun game that was. Played New Zealand Story, which is one of my favourite all-time platformers. Couldn't get on the old sit-down arcade cabinet. It's like Outrun or Afterburner or Star Wars, so I just had to give up on those. But yeah, an actual event itself, like I said, I didn't really play much of the consoles. I've got enough of that here to keep me going for quite some time. I spoke to a Sobi tech chap who's got all the lovely imported, Japanese imported consoles. Again, he was there. Lovely pieces of kit though, really are. I mean, to see some of these obscure consoles is great, especially for those in the general public that have nothing to do with them really. It's really peculiar machines. But another highlight of the event, apart from meeting obviously the YouTubers, was going to the Spectrum Next stand. I mean, obviously Jim Bagley was there, and a few of the other guys really that I've seen before. Sorry, I don't know your names, but what I love about that stall is how inspiring they all are, how they talk about the product that they're promoting. They all love it, and amazingly, a lot of it is what they do there, and the events is all voluntary as well, so they're not getting paid for it. But their love of that particular system is there for all to see. It's a really well made piece of kit. I mean, actually to push the buttons on it for the first time is fantastic. It feels just like a 48K Plus. Very similar keyboard. It's a very versatile piece of kit. Not only can you put an SD card in it with all your ROMs on it, but you can actually hook up a cassette player and play your old tapes. Imagine playing all them on the Spectrum Next. It'd be absolutely fantastic. There's loads of games being developed for it. I think I've actually got one somewhere that I'm waiting to actually try on the Spectrum Next. There's loads of games under development, and from programmers who in the past programmed games for the Sinclair Spectrum, so that's amazing. The fact that you can also code on it, program your own games. I'm sure Jim was saying there's with the actual computer itself, it's going to have a book of how to do all that, which has been written by Jim himself, Jim Bagley. But it's a very versatile machine, so if you're a sort of purist, or not that purist, but you know what I mean, if you're someone like myself, I would really like to hook up a cassette deck into the back of the old Spectrum and load games from cassette because I could do so, or I could just put ROMs in it, or try programming, whatever it is. It's a lovely piece of kit. But yeah, very inspiring being around those gentlemen because they absolutely do love that project. And I really hope, or really wish them great success with it, because obviously when they redo it again next year as a Kickstarter, they get loads and loads of orders because they really deserve it, because it's a lovely piece of kit. They've done everything they can possibly do to make sure that is 100% ready when it gets shipped out. So I can't wait to receive that, I've got to be honest, but it's really great to meet you guys again as always. That's definitely one of the highlights. And then there were some panels as well, which is always great. I enjoy the Houston Consultants panel. I remember the Houston guy from Sinclair User Magazine, because he used to always write a little column in there with lots of hex, and I was like, what the hell's all this? But yeah, he was always in there. Playing obviously games like Exelon, Cybernoid and games like that I absolutely loved back in the day, even though they were brutally hard. It was great listening to them, and the stories from like the sort of very late 70s and early 80s of how these businesses came to being is brilliant. I enjoyed that from the Ocean book. It is like Del Boy, it really is. And Andrew Houston's clearly motivated by money, because that's kind of what he was all about for him. I mean, at the end of the day, he wasn't really that connected to the games that were being developed. So yeah, it was interesting. I missed out on the magnetic fields panel. Completely forgot about that one. That would have been great, because I've got an old Commodore 16 game written by Sean Southern called Tutti Frutti. He's been writing games for bloody years. But obviously they made the games, the Lotus Trilogy and the Supercars games, amongst the many other different titles. I think they did Kid Chaos as well on the Amiga. So cracking bunch of developers, or a couple of developers, didn't they? Magnetic Fields. But yeah, cracking. And I also watched one of the panels, one of the YouTuber panels. Bit of moral support really. Can't remember exactly who was on it. I know it was Novabug, Zypho, Scott's Game Asylum, Top Hat Gaming Man. How's that dude called? He was hilarious. Big Barry, Big Bad Barry, what was his name? I don't know. That was hilarious. He was actually a very good host. What was his name? Big Bad Barry. Big Boy Barry, that's it, yeah. I've got no idea who he is, but he was good, I've got to say. There's one more on the actual panel, but I can't remember the name. But yeah, so that was kind of the events really. So I really enjoyed myself, probably better or more so than I did last year, being my first event. I really enjoyed it this year as well. I look forward to going to it again next year. Be good to see some more faces next year, especially the ones who didn't make it this time, who were there the first time, like Big Mike and Pete Old School Variety Face. Be great to see those two again. And there's probably many others that were there last time I didn't get to meet. I'd like to meet again in the next event. So for those who came up and shook my hand and bought me a pint and put me in cabs and all the rest of it, thank you very much. Really did appreciate your company. Again, thank you to Chris and to Steve for sorting me out with tickets and getting to the event. That's it. Thoroughly enjoyed it. I would recommend you do it, even if it's for the Friday night, or do it Friday night, Saturday, go home, whatever. I would recommend you do it. And I think the Blackpool Retro event is certainly unique because of all of those aspects I've just talked about, really. So thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for subscribing. And I'll see you guys again real soon. So take care and bye for now.